The desert had no wind that night, no movement, no whisper. It was as though the whole stretch of sand had emptied its breath and held it, waiting. Even the stars above hung motionless, pale, exhausted sparks that looked afraid to shine. And in that unnatural stillness, only one sound persisted: the crunch of boots sinking into powdery earth as Dr. Navid Ishran, archaeologist of 20 years and survivor of 1,000 ruins, marched straight toward a stretch of dune that locals swore did not exist the previous morning. Navid had learned long ago that deserts did not create structures overnight. Something else had risen. A phone vibrated weakly in his hand. A message from his assistant. "Arthi, sir. I feel like something is moving under the sand. I don't want to be here. Please, come quick." She had sent it 10 minutes ago. She had stopped replying after that. The coordinates she had forwarded pointed to a shallow depression shaped like a crater, its edges sloping inward, as though the sand had collapsed into a hollow that had been waiting centuries to breathe again. A faint blue glow pulsed from the center of the crater-like moonlight, reflected on water. But there was no water, only sand, sinking deeper with every step he took. Navid's breath turned cold, though the night was still warm. Something was wrong here, terribly wrong. "Arthi, where the hell are you?" He descended the last ridge and stepped into the crater. His flashlight beam cut across the sand, revealing scattered boot prints circling around the glowing pit. She had walked around it nervously, struggling with the decision of whether to climb down or run. But only one set of footprints led in, none led out. The beam of his light trembled. In the center of the crater was a jagged slit in the sand, like a wound torn open. From within that wound, the blue glow throbbed faintly, growing brighter with each pulse. It illuminated the curve of an ancient stone tablet, buried half exposed. Engravings sprawled across its surface, spirals, inverted sun symbols, and a line of script etched so sharply it looked carved yesterday. A breath wet and rattling rose from the slit. Navid froze, because the sand beneath him was rising very slowly, as though something beneath it was breathing. He whispered to himself, "Arthi, please don't be in there." He knelt, brushing sand away from the stone tablet's exposed carvings. One symbol repeated again and again, a vertical eye with 3 horizontal slashes cutting through it. He had seen that symbol only once in his career, on a fragment thought to be part of the pre-Canaanite abyssal cult. A culture erased from history for what they worshipped beneath the earth. They didn't bury their dead, they fed them. Navid felt a sudden vibration through the sand short, sharp, like something slamming against stone from below. He recoiled. The blue glow grew brighter. Then something inside the slit moved. A hand thrust out, a human hand, Arthi's hand, except her skin was pale as bone, stretched tight around the knuckles. Her fingernails had cracked, her palm trembled violently. Keep a fashion, unnaved. Help. Her voice was shredded, wet, as though her throat held sand instead of breath. Naved's blood turned to ice. He lunged forward, grabbed her wrist, and pulled with everything he had. Her arm came up, then her shoulder, then her face, and Naved staggered back in horror. Arthy's eyes were gone, not gouged, not torn, gone empty sockets filled with swirling blue sand that moved like fluid. Spirals of dust spun inside her skull like tiny storms. Her lips were cracked, bleeding. Her jaw trembled like she was trying to scream, but something inside was choking the sound. Her voice was barely audible. "Don't lift me. It's still wearing my legs." Naved felt his body go cold. "What do you mean?" The sand behind her shifted. A shape pressed upward. No several shapes. Limbs, arms that didn't bend right, joints backwards, elbows branching. Something had wrapped itself around her lower body, fused to her flesh. A long, jointed appendage rose from the sand, thin as a bone, but ending in a fleshy palm that twitched like it was waking after centuries of sleep. Naved tried to pull her free. "Professor, please, let me go." Her voice cracked like dry porcelain. "I don't want to come up." The blue sand inside her sockets swirled faster. Then her head jerked upward, unnaturally, as if yanked by invisible strings. The appendage beneath her stiffened, tightening around her spine. A sound rose from the pitlow, rattling, ancient, not human, not animal. It sounded like a tomb inhaling. The sand beneath her exploded upward, a long skeletal structure, somewhere between a spine and a centipede shot out of the pit, wrapped tightly around her torso and dragged her downward with a force so brutal, Naved lost his grip instantly. Her fingernails scraped across his palm as she was pulled. Naved. Her scream tore the air. Then the desert fell silent. The blue glow vanished. Naved collapsed to his knees, shaking violently. One moment of pure stillness passed. Then the ground beneath him convulsed. He jumped back as the sand where Arthy disappeared rose slowly, steadily until a humanoid silhouette formed under the grains, tall and narrow. It swayed as if learning to stand again. Then it turned toward him. The sand slid away from its face. It was wearing Arthy's features, not perfectly stretched, wrong, like a mask pulled over something that didn't understand shape. Her mouth tore open from ear to ear as she spoke in a voice layered with many others. "The door has eaten its first. The tomb is hungry again." It stepped forward. Naved stumbled back so fast he fell onto his hands. Sweat poured down his face. "Arthy, please. Whatever is wearing you don't. Come closer." Its skull tilted. It blinked sideways. "You were chosen second." Naved scrambled for his bag, pulling out a flare gun. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped it. The creature smiled with Arthy's broken mouth, opened the tomb, willingly, or the tomb will open you. Another arm burst out from its spine-thin, skeletal, jointed like an insect's. It reached toward him. Naved, fired. The flare erupted in a blast of red flame, striking the creature square in the chest. It reeled backward, its body cracking like clay baked too long. A horrible, shrill screech tore from its throat. Blue sand poured from its wounds. The glow within its skull dimmed. It fell onto the crater floor, twitching, spasming, then collapsing into a pile of dead sand. Naved backed away, panting. His mind spun. He had just killed something that looked like his assistant, something that wore her, something that wasn't done. The crater rumbled again, a deeper vibration, the same rattling inhale. The stone tablet in the sand began to lift slowly, pushed upward by something beneath it. Cracks spidered across its surface. A line of symbols glowed bright blue, the vertical eye, the inverted suns, the sigils of the abyssal cult. Navied turned to run, but the sand beneath his boots held him, not like quicksand, like fingers, cold, slender, and many. They gripped his ankles, his calves, climbing higher. He screamed and clawed at the ground, but more hands rose, hundreds skeletal, elongated, each one slick with blue dust. They pulled him to his knees. The desert whispered, thousands of voices layered into one. Open it, open it, open the dreaming tomb. He fought until his nails cracked. He kicked until his muscles tore. The hands only pulled harder. The stone tablet rose higher. Something massive moved beneath it. Something ancient. Something waking. Then the desert wind returned. A sudden, violent gust tore across the crater, smashing into Naved like a wall. The hands lost grip. The blue glow flickered. A column of sand spun upward into a tight cyclone at the crater's rim. It moved like it had intelligence, like it chose Navadand, slammed into him, knocking him backward onto solid ground. When he looked up, the crater was collapsing. Sand rushed inward. The stone tablet sank back down. The pit closed like a mouth swallowing its own tongue. The blue glow vanished. Silence. Only Naved remained, trembling, bleeding, breathing, hard alone in the darkness. He didn't know why the desert spared him. He didn't know why the tomb retreated. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. It was not done with him. A final gust of wind slashed across his face, soft, cold, deliberate. A whisper rode upon it. Tomorrow night. Then the desert went still. Night in the desert is supposed to be simpler, vast emptiness, a predictable silence. But tonight, the night felt crowded, like something unseen was walking just behind him. Dr. Naved Ishran drove through the endless stretch of dunes, fingers clenched around the steering wheel so hard the skin whitened. The Jeep's headlights cut a shivering path across the sand, but even the beams seemed frightened. refusing to illuminate too far ahead. His clothes were caked with dust. His breathing was uneven. The skin around his ankles still felt bruised where the hands had grabbed him. Hands that were not hands. Fingers that were not human. He had escaped the crater, but the desert had whispered tomorrow night. He couldn't stop hearing it. He couldn't stop imagining Arthy's face empty sockets swirling with blue sand, her voice speaking in layers of voices that did not belong in a human throat. Every time the jeep jolted over a dune, he flinched. The desert was moving around him, watching him, waiting. He kept the headlights on full beam, but shadows still clung to the corners of his eyes, shadows that felt like they shifted when he wasn't looking directly at them. By the time the small research outpost came into view, his heartbeat had reached a frantic, painful rhythm. The outpost, a cluster of 4 prefabricated structures, metal shipping containers acting as labs, kitchens, and sleeping quarters, sat under the moon as a lonely skeleton of civilization. Only one light was on. The equipment shed, naved throat tightened. Arthy always left lights everywhere, always. Seeing the outpost so dark made him sick. He parked the jeep, leaving the engine running just in case. He tried calling her phone again. It didn't ring. It didn't disconnect. It didn't do anything. He walked toward the lit equipment shed, each step unsteady. His flashlight beam trembled as he scanned the ground around him. Something metallic glinted in the sand. He knelt. Arthy's keychain, the little brass turtle she carried everywhere. He stared at it for a long moment, then pocketed it silently. When he reached the shed door, he hesitated. The air felt thicker here. He placed one hand on the metal latch. The moment he pushed, the light inside flickered. A soft shuffling came from somewhere behind the shelves. Naved froze. Arthy, no answer. He stepped inside. His footsteps echoed too loudly. The flickering fluorescent light above sputtered, as though someone were blowing gently on it. A sound followed, something dragging, not feet, not fabric, something softer. He raised the flashlight. The beam swept across shelves, picks, markers, containers, stacks of survey maps. The light stopped on the floor. A smear, a long one, dark brown, dried. It led behind the metal storage racks. Naved swallowed air like it hurt. Arthy, if you're here, please answer me. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. The shed felt like a throat holding its breath. He stepped forward, around the corner of the rack, and the world narrowed. Arthy was sitting on the ground, back against the wall, head slumped. Naved almost dropped the flashlight. Arthy. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her, gripping her shoulders. Her skin was cold. Her body was perfectly still. Her head rolled loosely to the side when he touched her, and the pale beam of the flashlight grazed her face. Naved's lungs stopped. Her eyes were missing again, except this time there was no blue sand, just hollow emptiness, not torn, not injured, just blank, smooth cavities, as if the eyes had never existed. Naved staggered back, trembling violently. No, 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 Northie, please. Her jaw hung open slightly, as though frozen mid-sentence. The skin around her lips was dry, cracked, but not injured. Her whole expression was peaceful, as if she had simply stopped. He touched her wrist. Cold, no pulse. She was gone. But she wasn't the creature he saw in the pit. That one had been moving, speaking, smiling. This was a shell, a husk, a body that had been emptied. His mind reeled. If this is Arthi, what was wearing her? The air vibrated. A faint hum, low, almost below hearing. He looked up. The fluorescent light above her flickered again. Each flicker grew longer, darker, longer. The room dimmed until only the flashlight kept the walls visible. Then the dragging sound came again. Behind him, slow, wet, deliberate. He shut off the flashlight instantly. The room plunged into rolling darkness. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a glow bloomed, blue, soft at first, then brighter, like an ember forced alive. It came from the space behind the racks. A tall silhouette slowly stepped into view, outlined only by the faint light inside its skull. It wore Arthi's face again, but this time the face was not stretched or cracked. It was perfect, too perfect, like a mask carved from memory. Her mouth moved wrong, as if the jaw were hinged from below instead of above. "Professor," it whispered, voice layered with deep, ancient tones. "You left too soon." She wasn't done. Naved stumbled back until his spine hit the metal wall. The creature stepped forward, its bare feet dragging like they were learning weight for the first time. The blue glow inside its eye sockets swirled, brighter now, like a living storm. "Why?" Naved choked, voice cracking. "Why are you wearing her again?" The creature tilted its head, and Arthi's voice, gentle, soft, familiar, slid out. "Because you were closest to her heart, Professor." Your mind collapses faster when the familiar walks toward you. Its smile widened unnaturally. Fear is a door. You opened it. Well, Naved grabbed the nearest object, a survey hammer, and hurled it at the creature. It passed straight through it and clanged onto the floor behind. The creature flickered. For a split second, the arthemast dissolved, revealing something segmented, something ribbed and jointed like a fossilized centipede standing upright on hind legs. But then the mask reappeared, perfect as before. "You can't strike a memory," it said calmly. Then the shed walls began to shake, softly, like something beneath the ground was moving. The creature stepped closer, and the floor collapsed. Navid fell first, crashing through a thin layer of metal and landing on a hard-packed layer of sand beneath the shed. Dust exploded around him, His ears rang. He tried to stand, but something was already crawling across the sand. Hands, hundreds of them, small, large, impossibly long, impossibly thin, all rising from the sand as if waking from shallow sleep. They reached for him. Naved scrambled backward, kicking wildly, his boots crushing fingers that felt like brittle bone wrapped in wet cloth. The creature descended through the hole in the shed roof without bending its limbs. It simply slid down, like gravity was an optional suggestion. Blue glow pulsed brighter. "You cannot run from a tomb that dreams," it whispered. The hands surged. Naved lunged sideways, tripping, rolling, grabbing at exposed pipes beneath the shed floor. He hoisted himself up as the hands clawed at empty air beneath his boots. He gasped, chest burning. The creature watched him, expression unreadable. "You are not meant to flee," it said. "You are meant to follow." "To where?" Naved rasped. The creature smiled. "Where she is waiting." It raised its arm. The floor gave way. Naved fell again, but this fall was long, too long, as if distance had been stretched. He hit stone, hard. Pain shot through his ribs. When he looked up, the shed was gone. The desert above was gone. He was in a chamber, a massive one. Carved walls spiraled upward, far beyond visibility. Symbols snaked across them, the same sigils carved on the stone tablet earlier. The vertical eye, the inverted suns, the triple slashes. This was impossible. This chamber could not exist beneath the outpost, yet it was here. The air was heavy, humid, warm, breathing. The chamber was breathing. Small lights moved in the darkness, tiny motes of drifting blue dust. Not dust, eyes. Thousands of tiny blue eyes drifting like insects, each one watching him. He crawled backward, shaking violently as the creature descended behind him. It no longer wore Arthi's form. Its true silhouette towered many-limbed, narrow-ribbed, its torso opening and closing like a stone insect inhaling. Naved couldn't look directly. His vision pulsed, his skin crawled. "What do you want from me?" The creature's limbs extended, joints bending backward. "One night remains," it said with a voice like shifting gravel. "Tomorrow, the tomb opens fully. Tonight, you learn." "Learn what?" The creature leaned close and whispered, "How to see." Its hands cold, impossibly cold, gripped his face. Blue sand poured from its fingers into his eyes. He screamed, but the sand forced its way in, filling his sockets like liquid fire. His vision exploded into light. Shapes, symbols, faces, skulls, screaming in eternal loops. Endless bodies buried in spirals. The desert breathing, the tomb dreaming. The world split open and Naved saw everything he was not meant to see. Saw the thing beneath the stone tablet. Saw how ancient it was. Saw how many civilizations it had devoured. Saw how it wore memories like clothes. Saw how it chose its victims. saw how it whispered promises to kings and nightmares to slaves, saw how it had chosen him next. The creature released him. Naved collapsed onto the stone floor, gasping, clutching his burning eyes. His vision flickered, but he could still see blue light moving beneath his eyelids. The creature stepped back. "Tomorrow night," it said softly, "when the tomb wakes, its many limbs curled inward. Bring yourself willingly." The chamber shook. The sand rose. The world inverted. The outpost stood once again behind him, silent, still, as if nothing had moved. His eyes still burned. He could see blue dust drifting in the darkness with every blink. He could see shapes beneath the sand that no human should see. He could hear whispers buried miles below the surface. He could feel the tomb dreaming under the earth. Tomorrow night it would open. Tomorrow night it would rise. Tomorrow night it would eat again. Naved fell to his knees. He was already changing, already marked, already seen, and tomorrow he would have to decide whether to run or follow the thing waiting for him in the dark. Dawn in the desert never felt this cold. Naved sat with his back against the jeep, hands trembling uncontrollably, eyes half open but burning with that lingering blue haze. Every time he blinked, the world jittered. Dunes seemed to twitch, shadows pulsed, and the sand near his feet, it breathed. He hadn't slept. He doubted he could ever sleep again. He kept checking the horizon every few seconds, terrified the sun would rise in the wrong direction. After what he had seen, nothing felt certain anymore, not gravity, not distance, not the sky. His vision had changed. Even with his eyes closed, he saw things inside the sand-moving threads, buried shapes, something long and serpentine curving beneath the earth like a creature stretching in sleep. It wasn't the desert. It was one body, one giant, restless body, and the outpost had been built exactly on its spine. The wind blew softly, but the sand didn't move with the wind's rhythm. It moved like skin shivering. Naved pulled his knees close, trying not to panic. His mind replayed the moment the creature poured blue sand into his eyes, the way it whispered, learned how to see. Now he was seeing things no human should, and something deep below had begun to notice him back. The sun climbed higher, painting the dunes in gold, but the light made everything worse. He stared at the ground near the outpost. Footprints, Arthy's boots, fresh, but Arthy was dead. The real Arthy still. Her footprints led away from the outpost, not toward civilization, toward the open desert. Naved forced himself to stand, legs shaking. "What are you?" he whispered, staring at the prints. The sand around the footprints had a faint, unreal shimmer like the heat mirage, but colder. He squatted to examine the prints. When he touched one, the reason became clear. The sand inside the footprint was not sand, it was blue. blue like powdered lightning, blue like the eyes that watched him in the chamber. The creature had walked here using Arthy's shape. Or maybe Arthy's memory had walked itself. He followed the prints, step by careful step. The desert was quiet, but not empty. His new vision saw shapes far beneath the sand. Ribs, curved bones, a massive jawline etched across miles of land. It was all the same creature, buried, alive, dreaming, waiting for night. The footprints led him to a ridge of unusually tall dunes. At the top, he saw something that didn't make sense, a hole, perfectly circular, as though a giant drill had bored straight downward. No wind could shape sand like this. He crawled to the edge and peered in. The hole was bottomless, not dark blue. Blue dust spiraled upward, softly, like breath. And then he heard it, a voice from inside the hole. Not Arthy's, not the creature's, a voice older. A sound like sand grinding against bone. Come down. Knave jerked back, nearly tumbling off the dune. No, not again, he whispered. I'm not going anywhere near that thing. The hole responded. Tonight you will. Behind him, the sand hissed. He turned. A figure stood at the base of the dune. Tall, lanky, limbs too long, head tilted too far. It wore Arthy's face again, perfectly, smooth, calm, but the eyes glowed brighter than before. And then the face changed. The skin peeled back like paper. Behind the Arthy mask was another face, and another, and another. Like layers of people it had worn across centuries. Children, women, priests, warriors, merchants. Each face slid across its skull as it took a step forward. Knave staggered back. Stay away. It ignored the command. The hole behind him breathed harder. The creature's many-layered voice whispered, "You see us now, and seeing is agreeing." Navid slipped on the sand, falling onto his hands. The creature crouched, long limbs folding inward, its head rotating 45 degrees with a sound like cracking wood. It extended a hand, Arthy's hand. "Come." Navid screamed and scrambled backward up the dune, unable to breathe, legs digging into the sand desperately. He expected the creature to chase, but it didn't. It simply stood there, tilting its head. "Tonight," it repeated. Then it dissolved into sand, its entire body turning into a collapsing cloud of blue and gold grains, collapsing without a sound. For a second, the dune was silent. Then the sand began to move, burrowing, retreating, going back into the hole. Navid stared at the empty space for a long time before he found the strength to breathe again. He had only one thought left. He had to leave, now, or he wouldn't survive the night. Knave sprinted toward the outpost, heart beating so hard he felt it in his throat. The jeep, he could escape, drive through the night, reach the city, warn someone, anyone. He jumped in and turned the key. The engine roared to life. He slammed the accelerator. The jeep lurched forward and immediately died. The dashboard lights flickered once, then nothing. He tried again, dead. He pulled the hood open, expecting a loose cable or overheated engine. Instead, he saw something impossible. All the wires had turned into sand, not cut, not burnt, transformed. The engine block was intact, but every cable, every belt, every connector was now flowing grains of golden sand trickling out of the casing. He stepped back, shaking. No, 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 please, not this. The sand was warm, alive. It began to hum. And then a voice inside the engine whispered, "Don't run." He slammed the hood shut so hard the metal bent. Then he ran to the radio room. He tore the door open. The equipment was intact, wires untouched. He grabbed the microphone, flicked every switch, tuned every frequency. "Mayday, is Dr. Navid Ishran at Desert Outpost K4. Anyone reading me? Repeat Mayday. I need immediate evacuation breach. Biological, supernatural, whatever. Respond." Static, then Naved. His blood froze. He dropped the microphone. The radio was still on. The voice came again, not through speakers, through the wires, through the current. "You cannot speak to the world. Not until you finish what you were chosen for." He pulled the radio off the table and threw it to the floor. It shattered into a dozen pieces. Sand spilled out from the broken circuits. The outpost itself was turning against him. He backed away slowly. His breathing was wild. The sun was sinking. He had hours at most, hours until the tomb woke, hours until whatever was beneath the sand rose completely. He needed a plan, something, anything. And then he remembered something. The tablet, the symbols, the markings that resembled the ones he saw in the chamber. Before Arthi vanished, she was translating them. She left notes. He sprinted toward the research cabin, praying the creature hadn't consumed everything. The cabin was dark. He stepped inside carefully, gripping a metal rod like a weapon even, though he knew a weapon wouldn't. Work against something that could turn wires into dust. The air smelled like old parchment and chemicals. He switched on a lamp. Arthi's desk was still there. Papers scattered, ink spilled, her notebook torn open, mid-sentence. He approached it slowly. The last line she wrote before vanishing chilled him to the bone. "The creature is not a god. It is a doorway." The next line was scribbled over and over. "Do not let it open." But under the scribbles, faintly visible, was a third line written in a different handwriting. Not Arthi's, a smooth, elegant script. "It already has." Naved felt his stomach twist. He flipped the page. More notes. Arthi had drawn the sigils from the tabletand below them. She sketched the same shape Naved had seen in the chamber. A colossal mouth buried under the dunes, lined with stone teeth, large enough to swallow a village. The desert wasn't covering a structure. The desert was the structure. The whole region was built over a buried creature the size of a mountain, a creature that was waking. Arthy's last detailed note read, "The blue dust is not sand, it is nerve, it is alive. It watches, it moves through hosts, it returns to the mouth each night. If the mouth opens fully, it will swallow the sky." Naved closed the notebook, hands shaking uncontrollably. His eyes burned. He felt the creature watching him even now. He didn't know if there was a way to stop it, but he knew one thing: he had to try. If he didn't, there would be no world left to warn. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He pressed his palms against his eyes, and the blue light inside them pulsed winced-wise, then opened like a pupil, and the world changed again. The cabin dissolved, the sand dissolved, the ceiling dissolved. Everything faded into darkness, but not empty darkness, a living one. A massive cavern unfurled before him, miles wide, lined with writhing tendrils of blue dust that pulsed like veins. And at the center, the creature, not the humanoid one, the true one, the mouth beneath the sand. It was opening slowly, ancient stones grinding like ribs, dust swirling like breath, a circular maw yawning beneath layers of doom. He saw humans, hundreds trapped inside its walls, fossilized in frozen screams, eyes hollow, arms reaching outward. Some were centuries old, some looked fresh, some still twitched. His stomach lurched violently. Then something worse appeared. A figure stood at the edge of the gigantic maw, a silhouette, small, feminine, Arthy, or the thing wearing her. Her arms extended toward him, her head tilted, her voice rolled through the vision. "Come, night approaches. You must see the world's first dawn." The vision snapped. Naved collapsed to the floor of the cabin, panting, eyes streaming tears. He stared at his trembling hands. He had one day, one sunset, one final chance. If he didn't act, the creature would open its ancient mouth fully, and everything would fall inside. The sun was sinking. The sky turned orange, then red. The desert shadows lengthened. The dunes twitched. The winds whispered, and the sand beneath his feet pulsed like a heartbeat. Night was coming. The creature was waking. And Naved Ishran realized he wouldn't survive until morning unless he entered the dunes, willingly, to face the mouth before it opened. Night did not fall on the house. It crept. It spread through the hallways the way rot spreads through damp wood, slow at first, then consuming everything with a hunger that felt personal. Outside, the forest had gone silent, unnaturally so, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The wind had retreated. The insects stopped their gossip. Even the distant creek felt gagged. The world had stepped back, leaving the house alone under a moon that refused to rise high enough to offer comfort. The protagonist, Arav, stood in the middle of the corridor, staring at the uneven pattern of the old wooden floorboards. They had not looked like that earlier. When he arrived in the afternoon, the floor had seemed cracked, yes, swollen by decades of neglect, but not like this, not swollen as if something beneath it was pushing upward. He lifted the lantern. Its shaky light spilled across the wood. A long, thin bulge ran beneath the floorboards, almost like the shape of a spine. Arav did not breathe. He lowered the lantern. The bulge pulsed. Once, like something drawing breath, he stepped back, but the board beneath him sighed a long, dry exhalation, as if a mouth hidden inside the floor was letting out air it had held for too long. Arav froze. Another board sighed, then another. The whole hallway slowly exhaled. The house settled into the darkness with a sound that did not belong to timber and nails. It was heavier. It was older. It was the sound of something that had waited a long time to be heard. Arav tightened his grip on the lantern and forced himself to move. He needed to reach the study room at the far end, the one with the sealed door he had noticed earlier. Something about that door felt wrong, but he had no other choice. Staying in the hallway felt like standing over a sleeping creature's ribs. He took one step forward. The bulge beneath the floor slid to the left. He stopped. Another step. It slid again, matching him, moving just under his feet. He whispered a curse under his breath and forced his trembling legs to keep going. The lantern flickered, dimmed, then steadied. Every board he stepped on groaned, as though tired of pretending to be wood. Something warm seeped upward between the gaps, faint, like steam from a hidden breath. The warmth ran over his ankles and climbed his calves. The sensation was almost humid, like exhalation or like fingers. The corridor stretched longer than before. He was certain it had been only 10 steps to the end when he arrived earlier. But now, after 15 steps, 20 steps, the door still seemed too far. The house was rearranging itself, not shifting breathing. Arav stopped walking. His heart hammered. He looked back. The hallway behind him was different now. The windows had disappeared. The wallpaper had changed color, and the door he had entered from was nowhere to be found. He was inside something that did not intend to let him out. The bulge beneath the floor moved again, this time abruptly. It stopped right under him. The board swelled. Arav instinctively jumped backward. The bulge retreated into the darkness beneath the wood with a wet slither. A soft thump followed, then a scraping sound. Something was moving below, dragging itself through tunnels that should not exist. Arav sprinted toward the study door. The house reacted. Every floorboard along the hallway convulsed upward, rising like ribs arching in pain. Dust exploded into the air. The lantern flickered violently, casting broken shadows across the walls that twisted like skeletal branches. The bulge shot forward under the wood, chasing him. he ran faster. The boards he stepped on rose and fell like muscle tissue contracting. He stumbled as one board buckled beneath his foot and nearly twisted his ankle. He threw his hand against the wall to steady himself, but the wall felt warm and moist, as if covered in skin instead of paint. He recoiled. The bulge was gaining on him, moving fast, undulating like a massive worm burrowing just below the surface. The floorboards bowed upward each time it passed. The lantern dimmed again. This time it didn't recover. Arav reached the study door and slammed his shoulder against it. The door held surprisingly solid, unlike the rest of the decaying house. Behind him, the floor erupted in a violent spasm. Something beneath it struck hard enough to crack the wood. Splinters flew across the hallway like sharp teeth. Arav rammed the door again. It didn't open. The bulge stopped moving. Silence, thick, heavy. Arav's lungs burned. His pulse throbbed in his ears. Then a single knock from beneath the floor. Slow, deliberate, then another. Then 3 knocks, faster. Arav pressed his back against the door, refusing to look. The knocking grew louder. The boards began to bulge, one after another, as if many fists were pounding from below. He could hear the scraping of nails, too long, too sharp to belong to anything human. Something dragged along the underside of the floor, tracing patterns, circles, symbols he couldn't see but could feel. The wood beneath his feet softened, as if flesh. Arav threw the lantern aside and hammered on the study door with both fists. Open, open, open. The knocking beneath him intensified. The floorboards swelled upward in violent spasms, lifting him off his feet. He stumbled. The wood throbbed beneath him. The grain twisted into patterns that looked like veins. A sound emerged, a wet, sucking inhale. Then the floor beneath him opened, not cracked, opened like a mouth. 2 long slits tore through the wood. A breath, hot as fever, poured out. Something inside moved, something he couldn't see, only feel. Thin appendages slithered out, damp, rope-like, writhing blindly through the air as they searched for him. Arav screamed and launched himself against the study door one last time. It suddenly swung open. He fell inside and slammed it shut. The knocking stopped. The breathing stopped. The bulge retreated, and the house fell still, utterly, unnaturally still. Arav collapsed onto the cold floor of the study room, chest heaving, tears lining his eyes, sweat pouring down his face. He didn't know how long he stayed like that. Minutes, maybe hours. The silence was suffocating, but it was better than the thing beneath the hallway. When he finally looked up, he noticed the room around him. The study looked untouched by time. The wallpaper was intact, the furniture polished, the books arranged neatly. It looked like a preserved memory of a life lived decades ago, frozen perfectly. But the air was stale, heavy, like the breath had never escaped the room. Arav wiped his face and stood slowly. Then he saw it. On the far desk, illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through an unbroken window, lay a single object, an old leather-bound journal. Its cover was cracked, its edges burnt, its pages yellowed, but the name on the cover was unmistakable. Arav, his own name. His breath hitched. He took a step toward it. The room's door behind him pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Arav ignored it and reached for the journal. His fingers brushed the cover. The journal opened by itself. The pages flipped rapidly, stopping at the center. Only one sentence was written there, a single line, handwritten in his own handwriting. "The house remembers you." Arav staggered backward, knocking over a chair. The door behind him breathed again. He turned slowly. The door, as wood, had bulged outward just slightly, as if something on the other side pressed its face against it. A long crack formed across its surface. Through that crack, the eye at the door did not blink. It did not twitch or widen or shift. It simply stared, fixed upon Arav, as if it had waited years for this moment, waited patiently, tucked beneath the wood and the dust and the breathing floors of the house. Arav could not move, not even to breathe. His pulse throbbed against the inside of his skull. His legs felt heavy, as if the wood beneath him had grown hands and was gripping his ankles. His lungs stung from the air he held. The eye watched him with a patience that was not human. It was too still, too dark, too full of a hunger that did not belong to the living. He forced his breath out in a slow, trembling sigh that felt louder than thunder in the silence of the room. The study door pulsed again, a subtle outward swell like breath pushing through cloth. The cracks widened. The eye shifted, not the movement of a living creature, but the sliding of something behind the surface, like an eel drifting through a slit in a rock. Arav took a step back. The floor creaked, and the eye responded, widening, studying him more intensely, as if discovering a new sound. Then the door whispered, not with words, with wood. The wooden surface flexed, the grain bent and twisted like tendons. Something dragged within the hollow interior, slow, dragging weight, a heavy body shifting through a confined space. The door bulged, as though something inside it attempted to push its way out and stand in the room. Arav's spine stiffened. He looked around the study. It was the only room in the entire house that felt preserved, unnaturally so. The wallpaper smooth, the carpet free of rot. The books arranged neatly, as if someone had dusted them moments before he entered. The window glass clear and impossibly untouched by grime, despite decades of abandonment. It was not preserved out of care. It was preserved out of containment. Something in this room was kept here, and something outside wanted in. Arav backed away from the door and approached the desk again. where the journal lay open. The words, "The house remembers you," stared back at him. He touched the page. The ink was fresh, still damp. His fingers recoiled instinctively, the way one recoils from something warm and alive. He wiped his fingertips against his shirt, but the sensation lingered, the way memory lingers, even when the evidence is gone. He flipped to the next page. It was blank. The one after, also blank. He flipped faster. Blank, blank, blank. Then, in the middle, a shape, a smear, a dark stain. He leaned closer. A fingerprint. A perfect, dark, dried fingerprint made of something thicker than ink. It resembled blood, but not fresh blood, not even old blood. It was too dark, nearly black, with a tar-like sheen. He brought the page closer to the lantern's faint glow. The fingerprint was not made with a human finger. It was too long, too narrow, too segmented, like the print of a jointed limb, something insect-like, but larger, much larger. The mark dragged slightly, as if the hand that made it trembled or crawled across the page. Then faintly, in the far corner of the page, a single word had been written below. Arofs swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, and the air in the study grew colder. Something brushed against his foot. He jerked his leg up, but there was nothing on the floor except the dim pattern of the carpet. The door behind him groaned. The eye retreated, disappearing into the crack. Arof's chest loosened. He staggered back slightly. Then the door bent inward, as if something huge leaned against it from the other side. A soft, barely audible tap followed, then another, then 5 more, moving up the door's frame like fingers, learning where the edges were. Arof grabbed the nearest object, an old brass letter opener from the desk, and held it out like a useless, trembling weapon. The tapping stopped. Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. He did not trust silence in this house. Silence meant the house was listening. His eyes darted to the window. For a moment, he considered breaking it and jumping. But something about the glass felt wrong, too clear, too reflective. It did not show the outside. It showed only his own reflection, and behind the reflection, faint outlines of things that could not exist outside the walls. He turned away. The journal lay open still, the fingerprint staring at him. Below, he remembered the floor, the breathing, the bulges, the skin-like texture. Whatever lived under the boards was not meant to be seen, not meant to be touched. Yet the journal insisted he go downward, but the house wanted upward. No, the house wanted inward. He closed the journal. The moment he shut it, the door exhaled, this time with force. The air that blasted into the room was warm and foul, like breath infused with soil and age. The lantern flickered violently and almost went out. The carpet fluttered against the floor as if caught in a windstorm. The door bent inward, violently cracking down its frame, not the way wood breaks, the way bone breaks. Arof stepped back, until he felt the desk press into his spine. The door cracked again. Something behind it moaned, a wet, heavy groan, not born of a throat, but of something struggling to fit inside too small a space, something crawling through tight tunnels, forced to compress itself, something with too many limbs. Arav dropped to his knees and crawled beneath the desk. It was a pitiful hiding place, but instinct told him that the house was reacting not to his fear, but to his stillness. The desk, heavy and old, felt colder than the rest of the room. Its underside bore carvings he didn't recognize, perhaps decorative, but they looked like symbols, ancient symbols, patterns of circles, lines, and spirals. Arav touched them, warm. The desk hummed faintly, like something inside it was alive. The door shattered, not into pieces, into splinters that flew inward like shards propelled by a force, not physical, but emotional, like the house's patience had finally cracked. Arav curled tighter beneath the desk. The room darkened. The lantern went out. He did not hear footsteps. He heard sliding, thick, wet, dragging movements across the floor, something pulling itself with limbs too soft or too long, something that scraped the carpet like it was tasting it. Arav pressed his hand over his mouth. The sliding stopped. The study air grew warmer, close, very close. Arav felt the carpet depress near the desk, something heavy resting upon it. Then something touched the edge of the desk. A finger, long, thin, segmented, jointed in too many places. It tapped the wood lightly, then scraped down its leg. Arav could not breathe. The finger slid under the desk, searching. The room felt smaller, tighter. The walls seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as Arav's heartbeat. The finger brushed his shoe. Arav bit down on his tongue so hard he tasted blood. The touch lingered, then withdrew. A low hum filled the room. Not a growl, not a breath. Something else, something like satisfaction. The sliding sound resumed, moving away from the desk. Arav stayed motionless, eyes wide, pupils dilated in the darkness. He did not move, even when the room fell silent again. Only when the faint glow of the moon returned through the window did he crawl out from beneath the desk. The floor had changed. The carpet was smeared with long, dark streaks, not blood, not dirt. Residue, thick, glossy, black residue. He looked at the shattered door. Nothing stood beyond it. But the floorboards in the hallway bulged downward now, as if something massive had climbed up and then returned below. Arav stepped forward and picked up his lantern. It glowed faintly again, weak but usable. He turned back to the room one last time. The journal lay open. A new line had been written. Fresh ink, still wet. You are in the wrong room. Arav staggered backward. The house seemed to inhale. Then, from far below, a sound rose. A scrape, a rumble, a whisper, something calling his name, far beneath the wooden floor. The rain began just after midnight. not the gentle, misting kind the villagers were used to, but a violent, sideways rain that slapped the windows of our own SUV as he drove back toward the old house. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. His breath trembled. His mind kept replaying the thing he'd seen in the attic. Not the shape, not the shadow. It was the face. A woman's face, but unfinished, like someone had tried sculpting her out of wax and abandoned the work halfway. One eye too low, jaw slightly warped, hair matted flat against her skull as though someone had pressed her head into the ground until the bones bent and she wasn't standing. She was hanging, not from a rope, but as if held up by nothing, just suspended in the air, head tilted, watching him. He had run. He didn't remember climbing down the stairs. He didn't remember reaching the door. Only the sound, a low, wet chuckle following him until he reached the outside. He hit the brakes now. The house was ahead, dark, silent, waiting. The rain hammered the roof as he stepped out. Water hit his face like needles. He unlocked the door. The house smelled wrong, like soil, rot, and something metallic, the exact smell he had sensed in the attic. He lifted his flashlight. Living room, empty. Kitchen, empty. Aaron, his heart slammed. That voice, Anya, his sister. He ran toward the hallway, slipping slightly on the wet floor. Anya, he called, breath-breaking. Where are you? In here. I'm in here. The voice came from the room at the end, the one that had been locked since the house was abandoned, the room their mother had forbidden them to enter. He tried the handle, unlocked. He pushed it open slowly. The flashlight beam shook across the walls. The room was dusty but undisturbed, an old bed frame, a window sealed with wooden planks, a heavy wardrobe, but no Anya. Where are you? He whispered. I'm here, the voice said again, from behind him. He turned sharply, light hitting the corner of the ceiling. Something was clinging there, human-shaped but folded like an insect, limbs bent at impossible angles. The face turned toward him, not Anya, not anything human, but it smiled with her voice. Come closer, brother. His throat closed. He stumbled backward, and his shoulder struck the wardrobe hard enough to make it shudder, and then a scream. Not from the creature, not from him, but from upstairs. A woman's scream, piercing, desperate, but no one lived upstairs. The creature in the corner twitched, head jerking toward the ceiling as if surprised. The scream came again, and this time it sounded like someone drowning while trying to cry for help. Arun bolted out of the room and ran to the staircase. Water was dripping down from the second floor, forming a small pool at the bottom step. It wasn't rainwater. It smelled like the lake. He climbed, each step groaning beneath his weight. At the top, the hallway was dark, except for the weak light from his torch. The scream came once more. This time, it was right behind the door of the attic. He froze. The attic door wasn't closed anymore. It was wide open. Something inside was moving, breathing. He lifted the flashlight. The beam trembled as it revealed a pair of wet footprints leading inward. Small, bare, feminine. He swallowed. Anya. Silence. Then a whisper from the absolute darkness of the attic. "Why did you leave me in the water?" His flashlight flickered. Everything went black, and someone, or something, rushed toward him in the dark. The storm had calmed, but the land hadn't. As Arjun and Mira climbed down the slope toward the blackened ruins of Havalakudi's old grain house, the mud beneath their feet felt warm. Not rain-warm, not sun-warm. Something breathing beneath the soil, warm. They stopped at the broken foundation stones, and Arjun raised the lantern. The wick trembled as if the flame itself sensed danger. The collapsed granary looked wrong. Its stones had not simply fallen inward. They were pulled, dragged, as if a force from below had sucked the structure down like a drained vein. The villagers thought the granary collapsed during the 1974 floods. But now both saw the truth. Water didn't take it. The ground ate it. Mira knelt, brushing aside wet leaves. Her fingers hit something metal, a latch half buried in the sludge. Arjun. This wasn't here before. He crouched, wiping more mud. A rusted iron frame emerged, rectangular, unmistakably man-made. A trapdoor, a door in the earth. Arjun's throat tightened. "This is where they kept them," Mira whispered, voice cracking. "The women who went missing, the ones with night voices, the ones accused of seeing visions." A chill slithered up Arjun's spine. Mira didn't look at him. She was trapped in her memories. "My grandmother told me that some women weren't killed, they were buried alive, because they spoke between worlds." Arjun swallowed hard. Now it made sense. The disappearances, the old stories, the thing that mimicked voices in the hills, the presence that followed children at night. The villagers never killed witches. They created one, and she didn't die. She learned the soil. Arjun gripped the trapdoor's edge. Something inside knocked. Not an echo, not wind, a knuckle. 3 slow taps. Mira stumbled back, but Arjun didn't release the metal handle. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "No," Mira said instantly. "Lie." They both heard. Arjun lifted the trapdoor. The smell hit them first. Old dirt mixed with metal, blood, and something older than rot. Something human. The lantern light fell down a narrow staircase carved crudely into rock. Scratch marks ran along both walls, deep enough to chip stone. Mira's hand trembled as she pointed. "Those aren't from climbing, Arjun. Those are from someone trying to claw their way out." Arjun felt his pulse hammer. "There's movement," Mira whispered. He listened. A faint rasp, a wet drag, a breath, then another knock. Slow, calm, deliberate. 3 taps, the same rhythm as before, like a greeting or a warning. Arjun stepped back. Mira grabbed his wrist. "No, she whispered. Arjun, if you go down there, you won't come back up. Arjun stared into the dark throat beneath the earth, a tunnel where someone or something waited patiently, like a host expecting a late guest. His lantern flickered, and from the bottom of the stairs, a voice rose, not ghostly, not distorted. Her breath stopped. Arjun turned to her. She was shaking violently, eyes wide, lips pale. That was her voice, Mira whispered, breaking apart. My grandmother. But she died when I was 9. The earth groaned, and something began climbing the stairs, dragging fingers across stone. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Arjun slammed the trapdoor shut. The knock from below grew furious. He threw his weight onto the door. Mira fell to her knees, covering her ears. Something struck from below, hard enough to rattle the frame. Arjun held the handle down with both hands. Another strike. Then a voice, closer, angrier, clearer. Let me out. The ground shuddered. Mira screamed. Arjun shouted, run. And they did. Behind them, the trapdoor bulged upward, as if the soil itself wanted to vomit out the thing locked beneath it. The scraping reached the surface. The lantern went out, and for a moment, only the sound of nails against earth followed them into the trees. The storm had died sometime after midnight, but the house hadn't grown quiet. Silence in Bramwell House was never truly silence. It had a pulse, a breath, a murmuring that lived behind the walls like something nesting, something listening. Aidan stood at the top of the staircase, lantern trembling in his grip. The night smelled wrong, like damp stone, iron, and something freshly unearthed. Somewhere below, something moved. Not footsteps, no. Footsteps had rhythm, weight, hesitation. This was dragging, like fabric soaked in water being pulled along the floor. He forced himself down the stairs. One step, another. Each creak of the old wood echoed too loudly, as though the house were aware of his every movement. Halfway down, he heard a whisper, soft, female, close, Aidan. He froze. The lantern glass shivered in his trembling hand. No one had spoken his name like that in years. That soft, breathy pull, equal parts longing and warning. No one alive. He swallowed. Voice a brittle thread. Leah, his wife's name, left his lips like a prayer, bleeding regret. The whisper came again, and this time it wasn't like someone calling him. It was like someone standing right behind him and exhaling the word into the back of his neck. Aidan, he spun. Nothing there. The staircase stretched empty behind him. The darkness thick like it was holding its breath. His chest tightened. Leah had died 3 winters ago, frozen on the mountain path because he didn't reach her in time. He'd lived with that guilt like a nail in his ribs ever since. But here, in this house, guilt had shape. It had voice. Something in Bramwell House fed on memory, chewed on it, learned from it, until it could speak in ways that cut deeper than knives. Aidan stepped off the stairs into the hallway. The dragging sound stopped, and then the lantern flickered wildly, wind blasting through the corridor, though every window was closed. The flame sputtered, stretched, and for a moment cast a shadow that did not belong to him. A tall figure, thin head tilted, watching him. When the lantern steadied, the shadow vanished. Aidan's breath hitched painfully. He forced himself toward the parlor, the only room he hadn't entered yet since coming to Bramwell House. He wasn't sure why. It felt avoided, like the house didn't want him opening that door yet. But something had changed tonight. The house felt restless, hungry. He reached the parlor door. Cold radiated from the wood, as though something on the other side had been waiting, leaning close. When he touched the handle, he heard it, a wet whisper right against the keyhole. "Don't." He jerked his hand back, but the door unlocked itself. The latch clicked, the hinges groaned. The door slowly creaked open on its own, exhaling a foul breath from the darkness inside. The lantern dimmed, its flame bowing like it feared whatever stood in that room. He stepped inside. At first, he saw nothing, just shapes of old furniture under sheets, portraits facing the wall, and dust swirling like ash. Then the darkness shifted, and in the center of the room, a shape rose. A woman, hair dripping, dress torn, skin pale as moonlit water. Leah, but not Leah. Her head bowed forward, hair hiding her face. Her arms hung unnaturally long, fingers almost touching the floor. Aidan's throat tightened, voice cracking. Leah, the figure twitched, a jolt, sharp, insect-like. Then she lifted her head. It wasn't his wife's face. It was a face stitched with the features of multiple women, eyes from one, mouth from another, jaw misaligned, cheekbones mismatched from a composite. A memory assembled from stolen pieces. The mouth, not Leah's, parted, and in a voice that was almost his wife's but wrong, layered. Too many voices speaking at once. It said, "She waited for you, and so do we." The lantern died. Darkness swallowed everything, and the sound returned, dragging closer, rising from every side of the room. Something touched his ankle, something cold, something that whispered without a mouth. "Stay." Aidan stumbled back, breath torn from his lungs, heart pounding so violently he thought his ribs might crack. He ran, out of the room, down the hall, up the stairs, not looking back, knowing something was following, crawling, dragging itself faster than it should. He slammed his bedroom door shut, chest heaving. Silence, then a knock, a soft one, delicate, wrong, like a child pretending to imitate an adult. 3 taps, tap, 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 and a voice. "Aidan, we're not finished." The first thing Maya noticed was that the dark wasn't empty anymore. It breathed, not fast, not loud, slow, wet, heavy, like lungs filled not with air, but with water and soil. She froze on the basement staircase, one foot hovering midair, her flashlight trembling in her grip. The beam cut a narrow line through the blackness, illuminating dust thick enough to swim through. The smell was the same thick rot she sensed outside, the smell of something that had died days ago but refused to lie still. Arun whispered behind her, voice cracking, "Don't move, it's down there." The breath in the dark grew louder. Maya swallowed, forcing her own breath to go silent, but the thing below seemed to hear the very beat of her heart. The wet inhale dragged across the walls, vibrating through the floorboards. Maya felt it in her spine. She took one more step, descending deeper. The flashlight flickered. Arun grabbed her shoulder. Maya stopped, but the basement answered first. A voice rose out of the dark, not spoken, but formed, like something dragging syllables through mud. Ma, a, ya. Her blood turned to ice. Arun backed up a step immediately. No, you heard that right. It said your name. The voice tried again, stretching into a wet, bubbling cry. Ma, ja, come. Not a whisper, a summon. The last time she'd heard her name spoken like that was on the hospital bed the night Arav died, when his breath rattled like broken glass. Her grip tightened around the railing. Whatever it is, it knows me. Arun stiffened. This isn't your brother. Don't go thinking. A sudden thud shook the basement floor. Then another. Something massive dragging itself. Arun pulled Maya back, nearly tripping over the steps. Up now. I'm not letting you walk into that thing. But Maya stayed rooted, transfixed. The basement wasn't just calling to her, it was waiting. And then she saw it. A shape emerged slowly into the edge of her flickering beam. A shoulder. No, not a shoulder. Something resembling a shoulder. Something that had tried to become human but failed halfway. Skin folded in the wrong places. Fingers that were too long. A neck that twisted like damp cloth wrung out by invisible hands. It stood at the base of the stairs and raised its head, revealing no eyes, only hollow sockets filled with something pulsing and red. Maya gasped. The creature sniffed the air and spoke again with that mangled, stolen voice. Ma. Ya. Arun pushed her behind him, but whatever courage he pretended to have melted instantly when the creature moved, not forward, upward. It climbed the stairs, not with its feet, but with its ribs, which cracked outward, hooking through the wood like claws. The sound of bone dragging across wood shrill, scraping made both of them shiver violently. Maya, run, Arun yelled. But as Maya turned, the corridor behind her warped, the walls bled. Not metaphorically, actual rivulets of dark, siop-thick blood seeped down the peeling wallpaper like sweat from the house itself. The front door vanished. The windows sucked themselves shut with a fleshy sound. They were trapped. Arun kicked at the wall, trying to open any crack, but the plaster didn't break, it bent. like skin, like muscle, like the house was breathing with them. Maya, what the hell is this? But Maya wasn't looking at the walls. She was staring at the creature, because it had stopped climbing. It lowered its head, almost bowing. And then something behind asterisk, its sockets blinked. Not red fluid, not empty holes. Eyes, to human eyes. Brown, familiar eyes she'd seen reflected in hospital windows, swollen with pain and fear. Arav, Maya choked. The creature tilted its head, and for the first time its voice changed, softer, trembling, heartbreakingly honest. Maya stumbled backward, chest collapsing with a pain she'd buried for years. No, this isn't real. You're not. Arun grabbed her arm fiercely. Maya, stop looking at it. That's not your brother. But the creature's voice melted again, reshaping into something wet and childlike. Why didn't you save me? Maya's legs buckled. Arun shook her hard. Look at me, Maya. That thing is mimicking him. It's trying to break you. The creature screeched, suddenly its ribs slamming into the stairs, splintering wood. It lunged halfway up, extending its two long hands toward Maya, the sockets trembling violently as if something inside fought to escape. Arun yanked Maya back just before a rib pierced the space where her face had been. They ran. The hallway twisted around them, stretching, breathing, pulsing like the throat of a massive creature swallowing them whole. Behind them, the thing crawled fast its body, snapping into unnatural angles as it climbed the walls and ceiling, chasing them with a desperate, choking cry. Don't go. Don't leave me, Agini. Maya sobbed as she ran, not because of fear, but because a part of her broken, hollow wanted asterisk to stop running, wanted to hold her brother again, even if he was trapped inside a monster, even if it meant dying. Arun saw the look in her eyes and yelled, voice raw, Maya, choose life. Choose right now. But the house chose for her. The floor suddenly collapsed beneath her feet, not breaking, opening like a mouth. Maya fell through, screaming, and the dark swallowed her whole. Arun's voice faded above. The creature's screech followed, and Maya hit the ground hard enough to see stars. But she wasn't dead. She was somewhere deeper, somewhere the house wanted her, somewhere Arif's voice was waiting. And in the suffocating dark, a whisper brushed her ear, warm and familiar. Stay with me this time. The storm had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. A thick, breathless quiet, as if the entire valley were waiting for a single sound before collapsing into screams. Arun stood in the doorway of the ruined shrine, soaked in blood that was no longer entirely his. Behind him, the walls trembled as if something enormous moved beneath the earth. The carvings of the red-eyed god, the same carvings that had been dead stone all these years, now seemed to pulse faintly, veins glowing beneath their surface. Mira limped toward him, clutching her torn shoulder. "Tell me you destroyed it," she whispered, voice shaking. "Tell me it's over, Arun." Arun didn't answer. He couldn't, because he could still feel the heartbeat, not his, not hers, but the heartbeat of something ancient echoing in his ribcage, the same heartbeat he felt when he touched the idol, the one that was never meant to be felt by human hands. Mira stepped closer. "What did you do inside the inner chamber?" Arun swallowed. His voice came out like gravel. "I think I woke it up." A deep vibration rolled under their feet. Dust rained from the ceiling. The stone floor cracked, thin red light bleeding from the fissures like molten veins. The idol's eyes, the carved ruby stones, flickered open, not metaphorically, literally. Two red slits of living light stared at them. Mira gasped and pulled Arun back. "We have to run, we can't," Arun whispered. "If we run, it will follow." It marked me. The ground split wider. Something climbed out. Not a creature, not yet a form, but a shape made of shadow and bloodlight, crawling from the crack as if birthing itself from the earth. Its limbs stretched wrong, bending sideways, then snapping back into place. Faces flickered across its surface. Villagers, missing children, the priest who vanished last month, all screaming silently as they dissolved into smoke. Mira choked. This is what the villagers worshipped. No. Arun shook his head. This is what the villagers feared. The shadow being reached its full height, taller than the shrine, and lowered itself toward Arun, like a hunter bending toward prey. Then it spoke, not in sound, in memory. Arun saw it all at once. The original village sacrificing a child every year. The priest who tried to stop them, torn apart by the god they starved. The curse placed upon the land when the offerings stopped. The god waiting, always waiting, for the next one. When the vision faded, Arun was on his knees. Mira held him, trembling. "Arun, listen to me. We can still get out. You're strong enough. We'll know," he whispered. "It wants me. Then we don't give it what it wants." Arun looked at her, and his eyes were different. Not glowing, not possessed, but full of a terrible clarity. "This thing, it will follow us. It will go where I go. It will kill everything to reach me." Mira grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Then we face it together." A small, broken smile formed at his lips. "I knew you would say that." Behind them, the red-eyed god leaned forward, the shape twisting, narrowing, focusing, as if preparing to strike. The shrine groaned, the walls buckled. The red light thickened around Arun like vines wrapping a sacrifice. Mira screamed his name. Arun stood. Tears cut through the dirt on his face, not from fear, but from a resignation so deep it made him look older than he was. "I'm ending this, Mira." No, but it was too late. Arun stepped forward and offered himself, not with raised hands, not with prayer, but with a single sentence. you want your offering. Take only me." The god paused. The shadows recoiled. The fissures stopped widening. The valley seemed to hold its breath. For the first time since awakening, the creature hesitated. It tilted its massive, shifting head, confused by something it hadn't seen in centuries. A willing sacrifice. Mira clung to him, sobbing. "Aaron, please, don't do this. There has to be another way." He kissed her forehead, soft, final. "There isn't." He stepped into the red light. The monster enveloped him instantly, swallowing his silhouette like smoke meeting fire. His scream never came. Instead, the shrine exploded with a burst of wind, a shockwave that pushed Mira back and extinguished every torch in the valley. And then silence. The red light died. The cracks sealed. The shrine returned to cold, lifeless stone. Mira stared into the darkness where Arun once stood, throat tightening so hard she couldn't breathe. The offering was complete, but her nightmare wasn't. The house was silent. Not the ordinary silence of night, nor the hush of a place emptied by fear, but the kind of silence that waits, a silence that listens, a silence that breathes back. Arav stepped into the final room, the nursery. The door closed behind him on its own. The crib in the center of the room rocked slowly. Once, twice, though there was no wind, no vibration, no movement in the floor. Dust motes floated around it like dead fireflies. Arav raised his flashlight. Inside the crib were photographs, not of children, not of families, but of every victim the house had claimed, printed on old fading paper, laid neatly as if someone placed them down moments ago. At the top of the pile was a new one, still glossy, still fresh, a picture of him, taken from behind, taken in the hallway, taken during this very night. His breath caught. Then he felt it, a warm breath behind his ear, a whisper too close. "You came alone, but you won't leave alone." He spun. Nothing. But the crib had stopped rocking, and the air felt full, like someone else was standing, unseen, a hand inches from his throat. He stepped back, but the door didn't open. He tried harder, pushing, kicking, but it didn't move an inch. Something on the other side pressed against it, as though a palm were firmly holding it shut. Then the rocking chair in the corner began to move, slowly, back and forth, and a woman's shape formed on it, not fully visible, just the outline, the shadow of an outline, as if a person was growing from darkness itself. Arav did not breathe. The silhouette leaned forward and whispered, "Do you want to know how you die?" The flashlight flickered. The walls began to pulse like a heartbeat. The photos in the crib turned one by one, without anyone touching them, until his own picture lay on top again. This time, the picture had changed. He was no longer standing. He was lying on the floor, eyes open, mouth parted, throat bruised. A hand, a shadowed hand on his chest. Arif's voice cracked. What do you want from me?" The rocking stopped. Everything froze. Then, knock, knock. 3 sharp taps came from inside the wardrobe. Not from the door, not from the walls, from inside the wardrobe. As if something had just woken up, Arav's flashlight died. Total blackness. He felt a hand, cold, thin, and absolutely real, slide down the back of his neck. And the voice came again, closer now, right at his ear. "Don't open it unless you're ready to join us." The door behind him suddenly swung open, violently, as if offering him a single chance to flee. He didn't think. He ran, down the corridor, down the stairs, past the hall. The main door was open, impossibly, though it had stayed locked for decades. He didn't look back, didn't breathe, didn't stop running until he reached the gate, where he swallowed bile and turned for one last glance. The house was quiet, still, dark, as if nothing had happened inside. Not a single window lit, not a shadow out of place. Arav backed away, trembling, whispering shakily to himself, "It's over, it's over, it's..." Then the window on the top floor clicked open by itself. A woman's silhouette leaned out, just a shape, just enough to see, and she slowly raised her hand and waved. Not hello, not goodbye, just a small wave that said, "You will come back." Ara froze, because the wave wasn't meant for him. It was meant for someone standing right next to him. He turned sharply, but no one was there, only the faintest breath on the side of his neck, and a voice that whispered, "You left the door open."